Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are really, really excited about this. And we're going to get started with some introductions. So I can go first. My name is Jade Ovadia, and I'm a senior communication major graduating in December. I use the pronouns she, her, hers. And as I mentioned before, I am a student intern in Student and Campus Life. And I'm also involved in the Campus Sustainability Office as a sustainability policy research associate. I've been a compost manager. I've worked in collaboration with the residential sustainability leaders before. Absolutely great office on campus and great community. Sarah, would you like to go next?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I am Sarah Brylinsky. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Assistant Director of our Campus Sustainability Office at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. I started my journey in sustainability as a student activist working on climate neutrality and campus sustainability over 10 years ago. And I'm so fortunate to work in a wonderful place like Ithaca and at a place like Cornell, where so many of our students, faculty, and staff are engaged in creating a culture of sustainability. And Liz, tell us about you.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Liz. I use she, her pronouns. I, again, don't know how to my phone apparently. I'm currently a second-year Master's of Public Administration student, concentrating in social policy and focusing in education. I also am a Cornell class of 2020 graduate. I was a communication major during undergrad, and I had the wonderful opportunity of spending a summer working at the Campus Sustainability Office with Sarah B. and the team at the CSO as a Sustainability Communications Fellow. I currently also serve as the graduate and professional student elected trustee, and I work very closely with Vice President Lombardi on brainstorming ways to engage the student community and just build student engagement and community resilience. So yeah, super excited to be here and super happy that so many people are joining us today. So before we begin, I want to provide a land acknowledgement for the areas that we're discussing today, given that we're talking about third campus residential expansion. So Cornell University is located on the traditional homelands of the Gaekono, the Cayuga Nation. The Gaekono are members of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, an alliance of 6 sovereign nations with a historic and contemporary presence on this land. The Confederacy precedes the establishment of Cornell University, New York State, and the United States of America. We acknowledge the painful history of the Gaekono disposition and honor the ongoing connection of the Gaekono people, past and present, to these lands and waters. And this land acknowledgement has been reviewed and approved by the traditional Gaekono leadership.
Thanks, Liz. It's so important to start events like this with that type of land acknowledgement, and it's such a part of our sustainability culture and pride on campus as well, a deep sense of ecological place and cultural place, and that has really been reflected in the new residence halls on our campus as well.
Yes, thank you so much, Liz. And with that, Sarah, would you mind giving us actually a brief overview of the sustainability efforts in place at NCRE, the new North Campus residential expansion? Like kind
Absolutely.
of the little elevator pitch of what's going on there?
Yeah, so I'm so happy to have folks joining us live. Perhaps you're at Cornell, or perhaps you're a guest from somewhere around the world. So here's some context about the project that we're celebrating today. Cornell University is working on completing new residential facilities on North Campus here in Ithaca, New York, and 2 of our buildings were opened this fall. So phase 1 of the project is complete, and we are really excited to have approached the building of these new residence halls with really building on a legacy of green building sustainability at the forefront of our campus initiatives, and really driving to create these buildings as a part of our goal to become a carbon neutral campus by 2035. So Cornell was the first, and it was the only Ivy initially to commit to carbon neutrality for our campus. And what that means is these new buildings have to help us really harness renewable energy, use energy in smart ways, but also use water and resources in really smart ways, provide for the health and well-being of the students and the people who live there and work there, ensure that we create deep social and cultural connections to our geography and the environment around us. So we are celebrating today right now with all of you live, the solar panels that were installed on the roof of both of these buildings open this fall are now live. And so this is your live solar panel. We are celebrating solar panels. We are filled with puns at Cornell. And I'm so excited to say that as of right now, on an uncharacteristically sunny day here in upstate New York, we are drawing renewable energy power from the sun that is providing power to our campus, part of our renewable energy portfolio, and helps offset some of the energy use at NCRE, which is our acronym for the North Campus Residential Expansion. So you'll hear us say NCRE a lot in short. So that's kind of a quick overview. And what we really wanted to do was provide a place for people to ask questions, not only about the North Campus buildings and the sustainability in those, but other questions that you might have about sustainability, climate neutrality, renewable energy. We're open to them all. So we had some amazing questions submitted ahead of time that Jade and Liz are going to go through. We're all going to talk about, but please keep submitting your comments and questions in the chat during this event.
Yeah, and if your friends are sitting on their couches on Instagram, tell them to join this live as well and learn about the super great initiatives happening here at Cornell with NCRE. So Sarah, when you said that, I had to peek outside of the window to see the sun because I haven't gone outside in a bit. But with that being said, can you give us a quick rundown on how solar panels work and how they're harnessing energy right now?
Sure. So solar panels harness energy by converting the natural energy from the sun that, is, again, on upstate New York today, and on many days, surprisingly, throughout the year, we're able to harvest quite a lot of sun, and passes that sun through a photovoltaic converter and transforms it into energy that we can use. Now, our solar panels on the roofs of our campus buildings get plugged into the grid. So energy that's being produced anywhere in any fashion all gets connected to an energy grid here in upstate New York. And so our renewable energy gets plugged into that grid, and then Cornell is able to use that as a part of our overall energy use on campus. So something that's really interesting about solar panels in particular, within the context of Cornell, is we now have 11 buildings that have solar panels installed on them, but usually solar panels aren't directly sending that energy into the building. That would be kind of difficult because then you'd have to have two systems, one for at night when your building needs to draw energy from somewhere else, and one for during the day when the solar panels are producing some energy. So most of our solar panels on our buildings, and this is true of most installations, get plugged into the grid, and then the building or the campus or the unit that has kind of installed them is getting that energy back from the grid and sort of claiming that renewable energy. What's really cool about solar panels in that context is that anytime we build a solar panel anywhere, we're helping with the renewable energy future of our whole community. We really all tap into those resources together. And if you need a more technical explanation on how solar panels work, I know some really smart engineers here at Cornell, but that's not my background. That's the layperson's overview from me.
Could you, I always, when we talk about the grid, I'm always like, thinking about the Matrix or something. Like, so is it like it's not a real life grid. It's just, yeah.
The grid that's a really good question, actually, because, one of the things about sustainability and renewable energy in general is unless you're an engineer or someone who really loves thinking about this stuff, it can feel a bit abstract, right? Like, where does the energy come from when I turn the lights on? So the grid is kind of a broad term for all of the infrastructure that gets power from where it's produced, whether that's a solar panel that grabs it, a hydro plant that water runs over, or a fossil fuel fired power plant somewhere in the country. It gets connected to infrastructure and helps that energy travel to your home, your office, and our buildings. At Cornell, something that's really interesting is that we actually produce all of our own power and heat and cooling for the campus. So we both are connected to the larger grid of New York State. If our campus energy production would go down for some reason, or in other cases, we are sort of plugged into New York State and our county and region, but we actually produce our own power on campus. And so we have our own what's called district energy system, where we're producing power and then sending that heat and power around campus, as well as renewable energy cooling. So yeah, the grid, how we sort of produce renewable energy in these new buildings and how the buildings fit into kind of a systems perspective is, I think, one of the things that's really cool about approaching sustainability in these new buildings from a holistic systems perspective. Yes, it's really important to get lots of things in each individual building right, but they plug into this history of green building on campus at Cornell, to a history of building this whole grid system of renewable energy power, and really making sure that all of the buildings, all of our energy, all of our water works together in a larger symbiotic system to use resources wisely. So in some ways, we get to always celebrate sort of what's new about these residence halls, like what's sustainable about them, but also how do they reinforce or use systems that staff and faculty and students and our community here have been investing in for, many decades at this point.
Yeah, no, I love that. Before we move on to the next question, I just want to add like a quick anecdote. I loved what you said, your transparency about, if you're not an engineer, like sometimes these terms can be really abstract. And I remember when I first started working with y'all in the CSO that summer, 2019, maybe, yeah, before my senior year, I was like, I don't know what any of this means. I thought I kind of knew sustainability stuff, and so I appreciate you saying that, because I think is often framed as something that's hard to understand, and I think maybe that is something that keeps people away from the conversation. So I'm glad to know that I'm not the only one.
Yeah, it's so true. And for those of you tuning in, hello from the Campus Sustainability Office and Student and Campus Life at Cornell. We'd love for you to ask any questions you have about campus sustainability here at Cornell and Ithaca, New York, and in particular about North Campus residence halls that have been coming online this semester. So yeah, let's dive into some other questions.
Yeah, so thank you so much also for talking about how this contributes to this larger system and Cornell's larger history with sustainability. It's really quite fascinating. And speaking of which, how many solar panels are actually installed on top of NCRE, and how much of an impact relatively is that making?
Yeah, so one of the sad things about having solar power on the roof of our buildings is that if you use those buildings, you don't get to see them. It's a little bit of a sad effect, and so I'd love for us to have something on the ground that tells you these facts, gives you something to hang on to. I wasn't able to ask our project engineers for an exact number, but I think on the existing buildings that are up online with our solar panels turned on and providing renewable energy today, it's about 1,000 panels on these first two buildings. And it's about 1.1 megawatts of renewable energy a year. So again, you don't need to be an engineer, and you don't need to be someone who thinks about renewable energy all the time to understand that that's a large amount of energy. Let me provide some context on that. So today, we have at Cornell University, from existing solar facilities, both what we call solar farms, which are big ground mounts on really large tracts of land, and then solar projects on 11 buildings, and our hydropower plant that actually uses water-powered renewable energy on BB Lake on campus. Those three systems together provide about 20% of the total campus electricity with renewable energy. And our solar, overall throughout the year, we have enough sunny days in upstate New York that there's a lot of days when we're getting 100% of our power on campus from renewable energy. So with all the rest of those solar panels, we're producing about 28 megawatts a year. The new buildings, right now, just the two that are online with solar panels that are connected, is an additional 1.1 megawatts. So if you think about the size of Cornell and then the size of that solar system, it's pretty efficient for just putting panels on the roof of a building. And then the second part about this question, I think, is how much energy does it offset in the building, or what percentage of energy in the building? And we need to have the buildings up and running for a little bit longer, and then the solar panels online for a little bit longer to answer that question. But what I can tell you is that on average, the buildings were designed to use about 40% fewer energy resources than other buildings of their size and scope. And so we anticipate that the total sort of carbon footprint or climate footprint of the buildings will be about 40% reduced. So we'll see what the match is between exactly how much energy the solar panels put out and then how much energy is being used in the building. And there's always a range in what a building can use, because it's up to the people living in the building or using the facilities how energy is used in the building. Right. So partially it's building the green building from the ground up, and we're going to answer some more questions about that. But since we've just had students move in, we're just getting started sort of creating a culture in North Campus buildings right now. We'll also have to see in a few months did we create a culture of sustainable renewable energy use in these buildings? Are we using less energy as a result of our behaviors and actions, as well as having designed the building to be really high performing in the first place?
So that 40% you mentioned, does that come from the student's perspective or from mostly the building itself?
Right. So that would be sort of the baseline in the way that the buildings were designed. So when we broke ground, sort of finished the building, we said, okay, all of our models show us that the way we've designed this building with really high efficiency windows, designing for thermal insulation, really thinking about the way light and heat and energy moves through the building, things like connecting into this existing energy grid that we've really invested in on campus. All of those things help us set this target of using about 39 or 40% less energy than a typical building like this of its size. So if you compare it to like another dormitory with this square footage somewhere else in the Northeast, because of course you're always trying to make an apples to apples comparison. So we could see the energy reduction reduced even more if we create a culture of sustainability in the buildings as we start to live and learn and work in them over the next few months. I would love for us to be able to say in 6 months, like, wow, we at Cornell are creating such a culture of sustainability, such a culture of wise use of resources that we thought we were going to see this building produce 40% less energy, and we're actually producing 50% less energy. Like, we were able to like see those gains. And I shouldn't miss an opportunity to plug, if you're on campus this semester or part of the Cornell community, wherever you are, we are running a competition all this month called Energy Smackdown. You can commit to a few easy actions that you can take to reduce energy use, and we've selected the things that actually make the most difference on campus, although you can participate no matter where you're at. You can register by going to the Sustainable Cornell Instagram that I'm connected to here, or on our website for details. It's really simple, but it really adds up. Those small actions do really make a difference in the way that a sustainable building performs over time.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And Sarah, another one of the things I just love the Campus Sustainability Office. But another one of the concepts that I loved was the concept of the living laboratory. And in the New Capital campaign, to do the greatest good, one of the things that the university is committed to is tackling the world's greatest challenges from theory to practice and back. And so when we talk about being able to have these measures to compare apples to apples, I'm curious if there are any ways that we are using what we're learning from NCRE and our sustainability efforts to do further research and further implement into other buildings, and continue to be the world-class leaders in these different areas.
Yeah, so this concept of a living laboratory for sustainability is that we have an ethos at Cornell that we shouldn't just do more sustainable practices or just transform the operations and the energy of our campus. Those things are really important. We will do that, but it's really important for us as an educational institution to use that process to open up the doors to the campus as we do it and allow that to be a laboratory for innovation. Similarly, if Liz or Jade or any of you tuning in today, anyone on campus is coming up with new innovations, new ideas, new policies, new practices, new technology, we want to implement those on campus and be a test bed for how we can innovate faster. So this concept of a living lab is totally at work in the North Campus residence halls in a couple of ways. One is that we have an energy dashboard on campus that almost all of our buildings are plugged into. And so we actually have a portal where you can look at real-time energy information, as well as water or cooling or heating, just depending on the building. And you can see that performance in real time and then link it to things like engagement activities or campaigns like Energy Smackdown and say, okay, we ran a campaign, we tried to get people in this building signed up. Did it work? Were we able to actually see a transition in people's actions? If so, how does that inform future sort of engagement initiatives or the way that we're doing culture creation on campus? If not, what was the difference between, yes, I signed up and I wanted to do this, but no, we didn't see energy reduction in the building, right? Where are those problem set areas? Because there's often a disconnect between, okay, I've set a goal to create a culture of sustainable behavior and I can measure and see that it's working. So it's really critical to have those data systems to play with. And what's really cool about our energy dashboard is all of that data in really small increments for really long periods of time is available just to download, use, compare, and play for any student or any faculty member, any researcher to look at. Wow. So you can really apply or sort of look at these new buildings, right, and say, okay, these were designed to be sustainable. They were designed to perform at a really high level of sort of sustainability. How is that working in practice, and how's the culture in that building contributing or not? The other living lab opportunity here is really with water and land management design. We've done a lot of cool stuff at Cornell. Students and faculty have done so many cool projects on this. We have what's called our Sustainability Landscapes Trail that features sites on campus that were designed by students, staff, and faculty together to our landscaping or do something for campus landscaping that was also explicitly sustainability oriented. So it like recharges groundwater, it uses native plantings, it encourages bees or other pollinator species. And there was a lot of thought given to water design and landscaping with the new North Campus buildings. And so there's definitely an opportunity to see how those landscapes perform. Do we capture water or rainwater runoff in the right way? Are we sort of, is the footprint of the buildings and the way that the landscape is working, performing with the local ecology in the ways that we wanted? All really great opportunities for study as well.
Yeah, so speaking of which, in addition to the solar panels and like what you just mentioned, what sustainable initiatives are being implemented in the new residential communities in addition to, you know, creating that culture and having these solar panels?
Yeah, well, I kind of turn this back to both of you a little bit too for like what's happening on the ground in the buildings. I can tell you that one of the things that we're most excited about with the new North Campus residence halls that have opened is the new dining facility. So one of the ways in which these buildings were really designed different, or this residential community was designed with sustainability in mind, was really thinking about the way that Toni Morrison Dining Hall is going to be a high-performing sustainable eatery on campus. I could do a whole 20-minute long laundry list of like the really cool ways that that space has been designed for sustainable eating. But one of the really, really cool things is when you enter that dining hall, you'll notice that there are not trash receptacles anywhere around the space. There's only one place that you can take all of your food waste or trash once you've eaten, once you've gotten whatever delicacy you're eating. You take it to a single central location, and then all of the food waste and all of the other waste is processed sort of in the back of the house. What that does is it enables us to have a much tighter control on capturing all the compostable material. And we compost our own food scraps on campus at Farm Services, and that gets returned right back to campus in our agricultural fields. So rather than seeing things like food or compostable material go into the landfill where it doesn't do anyone any good, we're going to be able to, at Toni Morrison, again, create this culture of you don't have to think about sorting as a consumer. We want you to think about sustainable eating. We want you to think about how much food you take, but at the end of its life cycle, we've just designed the system to work better. You don't have to be an expert on composting. We have a back-of-house system set up to do that really perfectly each time. And things like that are what's called choice architecture. So the buildings have a lot of these features where we've just designed it better to take the guesswork out of something. It's great for us all to educate ourselves on how to live the most sustainable life, but a lot of the struggles we have as a society, as a community, and as a campus are because our systems weren't designed very sustainably in the first place. So it feels like each of us individually has to carry around this laundry list of like, what can I recycle? Where am I supposed to take this? Where should I buy something? How do I dispose of it? It's great for all of us to be informed, but as we move over time, on campus, what we really want to be doing, like what we've done in these residence halls, is just designing better from the first place, making it easier for each individual to live sustainably within the system instead of having to learn how to do it better if they happen to be educated about these issues. And I don't know if there's other things going on in terms of like culture creation inside the buildings that you two have a window into. Those are some other things about kind of the design that I wanted to share.
Yeah, I love that. I think we society puts a lot of responsibility on us, not saying that we don't have personal responsibility, but finding that balance, like you said, of reimagining and reframing and reconfiguring the system so that we can also more equitably participate in it. I love that. And you mentioned composting, and that's, I'm not gonna lie, Sarah B, I've tried. And it's always fruit flies, and then I have a hard time. So where can one compost on Cornell's campus? Where does compost go? Do you have to always have the worms? Can you just give us the tea on composting? Did you see what I did there? Because I know
I love that because sometimes the excess from compost is called compost tea, so it's like a sustainability pun. Jade, you've been involved with the residential compost program, right? Do you want to actually take a stab at this and I can fill in?
Yes, of course. So yes, my sophomore year, I was a compost manager for my residential community. I lived in the multicultural living learning unit which is attached to Clara Dixon Hall. It's a program house on North Campus. And basically through the program, you can sign up to become a compost manager in your community. And this will include you collecting or acquiring a compost bucket that will then be placed into your community. And basically on a weekly basis, I had this bucket and in the kitchen, and I talked to my fellow residents about composting on campus and how to do it and what that looks like, of, collecting up your food scraps after you ate, and like what else could be, any other compostables, and placing it in that bucket. And then every Saturday, me and a fellow compost manager in the building, we would clean our compost buckets and just bring it. There's a bigger bin basically in the back of Dixon that we would bring our smaller bins to and clean them out. And then we would put them back in the kitchen, and it was super, super easy, and really also a great way to build community, because I got to I was very lucky that I found somebody else in the building who was like, let's do it Saturday mornings. And yeah.
So you can compost in any residential facility on campus. We have this residential compost program where volunteers like Jade and other students, and we're always looking for more participants, just keep track of a central location in a kitchen on every floor is always what we're aiming for. And you can take your compostable food scraps and napkins there, and then someone makes sure it gets turned to a central facility, and then it's picked up by farm services. If you live off campus and you're involved with Cornell, we have a really great website on Sustainable Cornell, or sustainablecampus.cornell.edu. If you just search for compost, we have some resources for where you can drop off compost locally, so you don't have to deal with fruit flies or doing the process at home. And then 1 or 2 tips for how to get started if you are going to try and do something at home. Composting is this really interesting area where all of us eat, and so most of us have food scraps in our daily behaviors. And so it's something that's really present in our sustainability consciousness on campus. It's a really easy way for us to say, how can we just make sure that we see this product through to its life cycle? Like, how can we make sure that we don't let any of this go to waste? Ideally, we reduce food waste up front, and then anything that happens to be wasted at the end of that process, we want to capture it, return it to the soil, get the ecological benefits out of it. It's not easy to get started at home, Liz. I feel your struggle. I've had fruit flies and problems with composting at home or in an office before. It's not available in every little nook and cranny, across the larger sort of local landscape, but I am really happy that we have it on campus for people to participate in, because again, it kind of takes some of that guesswork out of, I individually have to be responsible for every step, right, to we as a community have created a culture of sustainability that we invest in together. Like, Jade shows up and takes care of the bucket. She's volunteered for that. And you show up and you take your compost scraps to the kitchen, and we create that social contract of we can do this together if we invest in systems that work as a unit. That's one of the things I like about compost in particular, I think.
Yeah. And this notion of, everybody does what they can in different ways. So even though composting for me hasn't been successful in the past, one thing, I always have my hydro flask. And that was a big deal for me 2 years ago, switching from the plastic water bottles and making sure that I am washing my stuff, and I have my reusable utensils and my cubicle and everything. So just don't want to discourage anybody, if you don't live in a space that you think it would be easy for you to do so, there are other ways that everyone can get involved, and we're really working as a community towards these goals.
Definitely.
So speaking of which, there's all these little we can kind of flex sustainability to however it fits into our lifestyle, which is really awesome. But for students who want to get involved on campus with the Cornell Campus Sustainability Office, how can they kind of reach out and get involved?
Yeah. I love this question because Cornell is such an incredible place with such a diverse network of opportunities to plug into. So I'll try and make my tips and tricks here quick. The first thing I would say is you as a student at Cornell are at a campus that has a tremendously high amount of sustainability courses, majors, minors, and concentrations that you can plug into. Yes, I want you to be a sustainable actor in your life, but what we want most of all is to create an educational system where we are empowering ourselves as leaders and the future generation to not repeat the mistakes of the past, but come up with solutions for a more resilient, a more just, a more socially cohesive, and a more ecologically cohesive future. So sign up for a sustainability class. There's this really cool new feature in the course roster at Cornell that lets you do kind of keyword searches and does like a much smarter search through classes for things that you're interested in. No matter what you're studying or what you think you want to do with your time, your energy, and your brain in the future, sustainability is a part of everyone's path, so make it a part of your educational experience. The second thing I would say is we have kind of a pipeline of student leadership that you can get involved in, and so you don't need to be someone who like knows the recycling rules and knows how to compost and knows exactly what a kilowatt hour is. You don't need to have any previous experience to get involved and be a conscious consumer and a conscious actor in sustainability at Cornell. You can get started volunteering with programs like the residential compost program that Jade is a part of, as well as our residential sustainability leaders, which is our peer-to-peer education that we create in each of the residence halls on campus, which is a way to say, what are we doing in this residence hall? What's our culture here? And what's the education, the resources, and the programs that we want to be providing for ourselves? Because it's kind of unique in each little corner of campus. We have this like a really diverse set of kind of expectations or social cultures across campus. And so we work within that instead of having one blanket approach to everyone's needs. The other thing I would say, and this is so simple, but we are constantly sort of connecting and sending out a stream of resources for things like internships, events, opportunities, programs like volunteer competitions. You got to get plugged in to our social media and to our listserv. Cornell's a big place. You're never going to hear about everything. Make sure you look at the links in Student and Campus Life newsletter. They're amazing partners when it comes to sustainability. But sign up for Sustainable Campus, either the account that I'm live on right now or any of our social media accounts. It's a great way to just kind of have that passive monitor and say, oh, that's a topic I'm interested in. Like, here's something about sustainable fashion, or I see that there's something really cool coming up about environmental justice and racial ecology next week. Here's something about solar, and just start to plug in where you find interest. So head to sustainablecampus.cornell.edu for like tons of tips and tricks. At the end of the day, though, take a class, sign up to get involved, and have a conversation with someone in your building or someone in your community about what's going on where you live, because we have programs everywhere on campus right now. There's always a way for people to get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I was, like I said earlier, I'm studying public administration, and the new Brooks School of Public Policy just launched this year. And that's like one of the things that the new dean wants to explore, right? Is the intersection of sustainability and all of the social problems and issues that we're trying to face today. So I love that. I love that there are so many different opportunities so many different opportunities to learn about sustainability in so many different contexts.
Yeah, definitely.
That's something that definitely like has really been a highlight of my Cornell experience too, because it's just so cool to see how like interdisciplinary it is. And like I have friends across all different majors, and we can all kind of come together around sustainability a bit, because like I'm a communication major and I've taken like communication in the environment and different like communication based courses that revolve around sustainability. But I have friends who are like bioengineering and have taken different, very, very different, like more about sustainable systems, which it's just so cool to see how we, coming from two different backgrounds, can still like kind of center around this one topic and bond over it.
Definitely. If you are interested in getting plugged in, if you live on North Campus especially, take some time to kind of peer behind the veil too. I think a lot of sustainability on campus is invisible. Like, we started the conversation on Instagram Live today talking about how there's solar panels that got turned on live this week on the top of our North Campus residence halls. They are producing renewable energy for the campus right now, but you wouldn't be able to see them just walking around in or through the buildings. So there's a lot of information about kind of systems and programs happening on campus that don't necessarily show up in our physical environment every day, that are a little bit hidden from view. And it's great to spend some time kind of asking questions or looking for ways that you can get plugged in and educated about, like, where's my food come from? Where does energy come from on campus? What are the issues or areas that I think I could both learn about and then get involved in, through student assembly and governance, through, I think we have 42 different clubs on sustainability at the moment, always growing and changing for graduate and undergraduates. There's so much to learn and do, and there's so much information that's out there once you start to look.
Word. And so just wrapping up, I wanted to share like what inspires me most about Cornell sustainability efforts, and then ask the two of you to answer the same question. And so I kind of just touched upon this earlier in the what's called Instagram Live, that we really are like studying these things, implementing these things, and then using the research that, using the data that's coming out of our initiatives to continue to learn and grow. And I think that's so powerful and is not something that we see a lot these days. So I'm appreciative that we're putting words to action, and we can see tangible, I can't think of the word, tangible results from them.
I was also going to likewise say the tangible results are, what really inspires me to see that like our efforts are really like, it's, we are all coming together to make this impact, and you can really tell that the Cornell community really cares.
I think what I am most proud of with sustainability at Cornell is that we strive for progress, not just perfection. And what I mean by that is I am so proud of an endless list of programs, initiatives, student activism, like buildings, cool things happening here at Cornell. But there is also a lot of work that our campus needs to do, our community needs to do, our city, our county, our state, and our whole world needs to do to create a more sustainable future and a more climate resilient future to really tackle the grand challenge of climate change too. Yeah. So what I love about the way that we've approached campus sustainability as a community at Cornell is to say, we are going to try to do innovative things and to share those solutions. It doesn't mean that we're going to do it perfectly, and sometimes we're going to have failures to share that will also help others move faster. But we're going to try to use all of the resources that we have at a research institution with a bunch of really diverse backgrounds and opinions to create really interesting approaches to some of these really hairy problems. Like, how do you build really green buildings at a big research university? Or how do you power a campus this size, a campus the size of a city, with 100% renewable energy in just a few, in just a few short years? Those are grand challenges, and we really approach them, I think, by inviting every interdisciplinary perspective in. And I feel really proud to be continuing in the process. Sustainability is never a destination. It is always about the process. Make sure you feel pride in the things that are going well here that you can share, in your community, in your work, in your residence hall, whatever you're doing, and say, listen, we're doing this really well, and that makes me want to push for change and continue on the path of progress in these other areas where we still have room to grow. So I'm proud of our progress, and never rest on the laurels of any illusions of perfection.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And again, thank you so much, Sarah, for providing your expertise.